Presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg is not faring well in South Carolina. At one point, during one of his visits to a rally, Pete was literally chased out by protesters. So now this rally was organized by Fight for 15 and involved a group called Black Votes Matter or Black Voters Matter. Now, Fight for 15 was calling on McDonald's workers to unionize and strike for better pay and better wages, right? So now during that rally, Pete Buttigieg decides he's going to show up, I think uninvited, and well, let's just say it went kind of poorly. Protesters, according to Tampa Bay Times political editor Steve Contorno, who was there at the rally, said that protesters began heckling Mr. Buttigieg at the demonstration. Quote, one of the protesters saying, "Where was 15 in South Bend? Pete can't be our president." According to another editor, according to the editor, one Black Voters Matter protester yelled at Buttigieg saying, "How dare you? This is a worker strike." Pete, of course, not being an actual worker. Now, Brittany Smalls, a coordinator with the organization Black Voters Matter, came down from Pennsylvania, by the way, to support the efforts for a higher minimum wage, said she stepped away from the protesters when Buttigieg appeared behind a banner at the front of the march that read "Unions for All." She said, quote, "I stepped away when he decided to join the race for photo ops because that's all he does." And she's not the only one who thought so. Nick Rubin, a Charleston resident who volunteers with Fight for 15 and supports Bernie Sanders, said he also attended the rally to support the protest. But when Buttigieg showed up, he was a little angry. Quote, "Pete is using them cynically as a photo op to pretend he cares about working class people." Now, Buttigieg addressed the crowd as he was being heckled, according to Reuters, saying, quote, "No matter who you support for president, I support you and I support unions and a $15 minimum wage." Actually, so to do a little correction, by the way, I believe he was invited to this. And so he showed up and let's be honest, he was being welcomed by some of the protesters, right? But others were not thrilled about this. Now, Mr. Contorno, who attended the event, tweeted this: "Buttigieg had to race into his car after the rally as he was chased down by Black Voters Matter protesters." Reuters, of course, then followed that account. He then began running towards his vehicle to avoid a confrontation with protesters. "Gone, get in the car. Gone, gone." How entirely Pete-like to run away. And the reason is, there are a lot of people that didn't welcome his presence there. And it's not just because of his low support among the African-American voting bloc, but I think it's because of who he is. Pete Buttigieg is not for workers. In fact, he's literally the image that you get in your head when you think of management. And that's it. He's also what would happen if all the office inspirational posters combined and became sentient. Nothing but empty platitudes. So much air you would float away. But look, his real record, by the way, was working against workers at McKinsey. McKinsey used to advise different places that were facing financial troubles. And the first thing that they would do, instead of saying maybe the management or executives should forego some of their bonuses and decrease their own pay, their first go-to is, let's fire people. That'll help. Let's fire more employees. So he's not exactly pro-worker, okay? That's who Buttigieg is. He is management that is pretending to be your friend. He's pretending to care about you. Management, as I've learned, is almost never your friend. Now, earlier in the day, during the McDonald's event, protesters also hit Buttigieg for not getting people $15 an hour in South Bend. Now, I'm actually going to defend that point, Pete Buttigieg on that point, because Indiana state law doesn't allow municipalities to require minimum wage for private businesses. So he wasn't really allowed to do that. But he could set minimums for city employees. And so did he do that? Well, during the North Charleston Forum, he said he had instituted minimum wages for city employees that were, quote, north of $10 an hour and on the path to $15. A little bit of change, tiny bit of change, but not really. on the path. So basically, no, he didn't use his power to set a living wage when he could have set a living wage. So the entire thing is why, of course, it's a perfect illustration of why people don't like Pete Buttigieg. He's an empty suit. He shows up, gives flowery language, and does platitudes, and can't back it up with action. This is at a time when people cannot see, or when they can actually see through the BS. Because back before, there was a time, and this is where he reminds me of, and I know I'm going to wrinkle some feathers here or ruffle some feathers, but back in the time with Obama was sort of the same thing, flowery language, great orator, knew what he was doing, right? When it comes to, politicking as a progressive. But when it came time to deliver, he didn't on a lot of things. And some of it wasn't his fault, but some of it was. And he didn't fight for those issues. And so Pete Buttigieg is like your, it's like your cheap ripoff of Obama, kind of, right? That's what it reminds me of. It's like the cereal, right? The brand name stuff versus what you get in the bag. So Pete Buttigieg is bagged cereal. He's off brand. And so it's not appealing because he's literally a copy and he's faking it. And that is the biggest problem with Buttigieg. And that's why he doesn't resonate with working people, because at the end of the day, Pete Buttigieg is basically a fraud. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.